Hey everyone, I hope you're well. You're joining me, your host, Max Pears. It's an absolute pleasure to have you listening. I hope you're having a good morning, evening, or night whenever you are listening, and that your loved ones are safe. But not only am I joining you to caress your smooth ears, I've also got a great man himself, the one, the only, Kevin Penkin. My friend, how you doing?
Good to see you. How are you? Well, good to hear from you, I guess.
Just so you don't want to see me, mate. I'm the COVID long hair is grown very long now.
It's a great excuse to grow long hair and not shave.
Well, I tried the whole not shave, but I got a ginger beard, so it doesn't end up. It looks weird because I got brown hair and a ginger beard.
Yeah. I feel that.
So I don't get to pull it off as much as I'd love to. You know what I mean? But I mean, how are you doing, mate? Everything good?
Well, it's a crazy time down here in Australia. I mean, I guess just the nature of the way that COVID kind of manifested itself in Australia. We've been. I live in Melbourne, which is the state of Victoria, and we've been COVID free for about 35 days now. So we've had 0 cases, which is pretty crazy. But we have 0 cases off the back of having a second wave, which kind of decimated us. Basically, it was pretty horrible. I mean, for us, for Australia, getting about 700 cases a day was soul crushing. That's a huge number for us. And I know that, that's taken with a grain of salt when in relation to other countries. But for us, that was really, really big and it was very, very sort of heartbreaking and resulted in a very, very strict lockdown. But that lockdown did result in, as I said before, it's basically 0 cases now. We basically starved it to death to an extent. Which is lovely. And hopefully we can kind of ride that, I guess, until a worthy vaccine is ready. I guess that's kind of the idea now. Just ride it out with this sort of isolationist sort of attitude. And hopefully once this, assuming that an effective vaccine is created and widely distributed, hopefully there'll be some sort of normalcy, some sense of normalcy at least.
I hope so, mate, because, yeah, it's definitely been the weirdest year for all of us, and hopefully.
I mean, because I came out of 2019 thinking, you know what, I'm going to take a year off where I'm not traveling as much. I actually came out of, because 2019, very, very crazy year for me. I read about 5.5 hours of quite dense, very kind of emotionally draining music, which is a lot of music for me personally. A lot of projects came out, which was lovely, of course, but, at the end of the day, very, very tiring. I traveled a lot. I think I spent about 10.5, 11 days just purely in the air last year, not counting anything else, just purely like in a, pressurized air canister about 11 days. And so, I came into 2020 thinking, you know what? I'm just going to travel when I want to travel and, be probably just cheeky trips to Japan because it's way closer because I live in Australia. It's a bit, it's different time zone and all that sort of thing. But, I guess, that hand was forced for me along with everyone else because the world shut down. And I guess, so, I mean, still working. I've always worked remote, but, I had this idea once upon a time I was very passionate about being able to get a place or rent a place where my studio environment was completely separated from my home environment. And that didn't fully happen. It's more like I have a separate room in the flat that I live in. But I've never appreciated the fact that I can actually operate from a home base now based off the fact that, all our preconceptions about having to be on location for things or be at additional locations for things, or that assumption that needs to be a thing doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Like even, when you browse certain jobs now, especially because games is similar for other people, because you're involved with more the music side, involved more the level design side, but seeing how job openings have become more work from home has been more encouraged now. I've seen just in general because of this. It's quite insane. Like really, like you said, the preconceived notions have just been shattered. But now, a quick word from today's sponsors. Today's sponsor is Mudstack. It is the only asset management and collaboration platform custom built for game studios and digital artists. Mudstack is built to solve problems. The key 3 solutions is finding assets. We all know when you have such complex naming conventions or that you don't have a tag system, it can be really hard to find that. So instead of that, what Mudstack does, it creates a system that works for you rather than you being forced to work with these parameters, giving you such things as tags and filters search in order to help you organize your asset files. Artists don't use version control, whether that be perf or subversion. Version control, as many of us know, can be quite a daunting tech to use, or can also be something that we struggle to get to use. But not with Mudstack now. Step away from that complexity of source control and get version control that is built for artists first. The reviewing process. We all know that it takes time to bring up the assets you need in order to quickly get it reviewed before it's being sent back to the drawing board. But with Mudstack, what you can do is have your art, your assets reviewed at any time, right there in the browser. No more searching, downloading, or rushing to open these files right before the meeting. They can be reviewed at any time by anyone. So if you're looking to clean up your files and make your asset browser as smooth as possible, go no further than to look at Mudstack. All of the links will be in the description down below.
Well, this is an interesting conversation, especially from the composer standpoint or the composer point of view for a moment, because a lot of my peers, my friends, my colleagues, a lot of us tend to work from home anyway. It's a very, very freelance heavy job. You know, I speak in general terms. It's not as I won't speak for everyone, but you know, a lot of the people I know work freelance. They typically work from home, or they work out of a studio with a higher successful composer. You know, a composer that's sort of been around for quite a few years. But you know, a lot of us work from home anyway. So it's almost like this is just an extension of our daily job anyway. But it's kind of interesting to see everyone else go through it. It's kind of like that meme of James Franco with the noose around his head where it's like first time here. And it's like, I must say one gospel I will attempt to preach here is that the thing about working from home is that routine is absolutely essential. And that balance, trying to find a balance where you may have not needed to think about it as actively before, based off the fact that you work out of an office and there's a certain, culture there. If you're basically having to create your own work-life culture from scratch from home, it's very, very difficult. But, being able to have that separation or be able to kind of figure out what works for you as a working professional from home, and also balance that with your personal life is, I think, probably a lot of people have gone through that learning experience this year.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. I think it's especially so for me. My apartment is an open plan apartment, and my previous one had rooms to it. And I've noticed that, especially with an open plan where I can see my computer or workstation from anywhere in my place, I sometimes feel like, oh man, I should probably just hop on and do a little bit more. And I think if you're able to separate it somehow, either, like I said, mentally communicating or able to just shut the door on your office space, do it. Because I think you're right. You can just be drawn into it very quickly.
Well, I mean, I don't have an inherent issue with the gravity of like the appeal of wanting to work. The motivation to work I find great. But I definitely would argue that it shouldn't be forced. I mean, working as a professional has certain realities that has to come with it. You got to work. You got to work sometimes more than you were hoping to in a particular day. but hopefully within some sort of healthy, context. But I mean, I'll just speak for myself, but I found it very, very effective to wake up very early in the morning and write music, for example, from about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning until about 11, 12, 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and actually be essentially done for the day. And so I could have that afternoon to, well, we couldn't really, go out at the time because of the lockdown, but you could kind of take that time to do other things, just be a human being.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think because I thought I woke up early because I got up at 6, but you've bested me there yet again. But
well, to be fair, it was winter at the time. Obviously our seasons are flipped down here, so we're coming to summer. Our Christmas Day is 40 degrees Celsius, which is awesome in my opinion. But that's just me. But we had our second wave during winter, which actually in a weird way kind of helped because people, the Australian motivation is to go outside when it's sunny and go to the beach and get sunburnt. That's the sort of that's the MO for a lot of people down here, and to an extent, myself included. But because our second wheel of shit that hit the fan sort of happened during our southern hemisphere winter, I guess everyone's kind of stayed inside, and so because it's less light, it was easier to wake up early and go to sleep early. Whereas, if there's a lot of sunlight, you feel more motivated to try and be a human being, which I guess, is what's coming in now. So when you say 6 a.m., I actually way closer to that now because there's, sunlight's good, man. Sunlight is good.
Oh, yeah, dude. Get out with it when you can. I'm pasty white, so I definitely can't spend too much time out there.
Right.
But I try to enjoy that, because I sizzle. I don't tan. I just go a nice sherry wine color. So.
I see. Yeah. No, you gotta learn how to absorb that UV properly, son.
That's what everyone tells me, but I just end up frying. Like when I went to visit America over in LA, I was like, "Oh, cool! I'm a tomato now. This is sexy, right?"
Yeah. No, yeah, there's a bunch of factors in that, none of which I'm educated to actually talk about.
I just blame bad genetics. That's all I do.
No, I mean it is what it is. But yes, the routine during lockdown is. It depends on when you're hearing this, and it depends, I guess, on the country that you're listening to it in at this point. But I did find that routine at least kept me relatively sane enough.
I agree. I ordered some kettlebells and a pedal bike just because I used to like going to the gym for me, and the routine of still being able to wake up in the morning, do some form of exercise just to help separate work and just put me in the right mental state. So I agree, man, finding your routine, whether it be through reading a book or working out, just something to just set your mind right, I think is important.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think probably, I don't know anyone, I don't know your particular sort of audience, and I won't speak for yourself either, even though we had a lovely conversation before we hit the record button. But, I guess one thing that I've realized is that traveling was, to an extent, a pretty heavy part of my life, whether I thought about it consciously or not. And I guess because, in my case, I thought of it as a reset, as a way to get away from things, forcefully or not. And, that lifestyle doesn't exist for 2020 and potentially a good chunk of 2021 as well. And so, this idea of being able to reset by exiting yourself from your environment, that process now has to be achieved in a very, very different way.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah. And, everyone's going to find a different result. Hopefully everyone does find a positive result, but it's tough, very, very tough year.
For sure. And I think, like you're saying, finding a way to keep yourself also entertained in many ways, whether that be through, if you want to watch a film or something on Netflix, or, YouTube, play games, listen to music, read a book. I think at some point mentally, man, how much can I keep doing this to help, like you say, either reset or just refocus? And yeah, it's been an eye-opening experience, I think, for everyone.
I guess it feels, maybe this is just like the fatigue talking a little bit, the mental fatigue, but to an extent, even in a country like Australia, which has done relatively quite well with the virus, you still feel like you're punching the clock just a little bit until you get on that first airplane and go to that country you really want to go to. But even that being said, I mean, not to make it too morbid, and I'll go off the subject matter, but like, considering there are other people and other communities that have been way worse devastated compared to us, or compared to like our community to an extent, or in some ways, I guess there is a certain amount of gratitude to the fact that we have been able to at least survive this far with, I won't speak for everyone, but, maybe minimal scarring, depending on where you are. But I mean, that's a very personal opinion, though. I really don't want to minimize any other damage that may have happened to anyone else.
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we both hope that whoever's listening to this, you and your loved ones are safe and are able to, have some form of normalcy in terms of conversations with the people you love. Maybe not always get to see them as much as you want, but still know they're there, still be able to, eat nice. That's what we still hope for all of you,
Exactly.
Now we're going to sing you a song like celebrities do, right? Because that's what people do, to make others feel better.
The people. Yeah. Why'd you have to do that, Ruffalo? Just Ruffalo, man. I was like, man, you're a great dude. Why'd you do that?
Dude, there was a couple of them. Like I saw, I was like, fucking celebrities, bro. Celebrities.
But as you know, that song was sung in March and COVID was cured by April, so...
I don't want to say the correlation was there, but it was pretty close. I think they may have done something with it. All those beautiful voices, mate. All those beautiful voices.
It has been so interesting to see how people have adapted, though, especially in our community. I mean, I never, personally speaking, I never considered streaming before. I stream now, at least occasionally, and it's good fun. It's a great way to reach out to people in a way that you didn't before. And you can't reach out in maybe a similar way that you did before. So, obviously, your background with CD Projekt Red, like you've been working so hard for so long. Like it almost felt like this pandemic was just like it was just adding track to the train, but the train was already going. You just had to find another way to kind of get to the destination.
Yeah, man. I think that's the most interesting point is to view how it's all. They said affected different things in different ways. Like if you look at just take console releases, for example, with the new Xboxes and PlayStations, numbers are limited due to the fact of production lines, COVID, like getting the right parts, and affected in different ways. And it's definitely been an interesting one to see how big of an impact it has on everything. I mean, I started my OnlyFans account as well. So, if people want to subscribe to see the better version, the behind the scenes, if you will, honestly, please don't. Like the last thing you don't want to see is my beard gut, my hairy beard gut.
I mean, culture is culture is culture.
I see you're a man of culture. So
always you got to try at least.
I mean, look, one day I'll make as much money as some of the bigger earners, right?
Sure. Those 0.1% top. I mean, the one thing I do genuinely miss, personally speaking, is the traveling to record or the traveling to work with musicians. I mean, because I know we'll talk about Florence at some point, but like the thing that made that soundtrack for me was working with musicians that I'd known for a very long time in a very specific location, and that ability to go and collaborate with people in person on any project, anime, game, whatever. I do. That's probably the hardest part, if I must be honest. It's the one part that I've always had. Side note quickly, I'm quite the control freak when it comes to composition, when it comes to my part of the job for games, anime, etc. I try and control every part of my, statement, artistic statement, if you will, in that product, in that IP. And so to have to relinquish part of something that I already had control of before, based on the fact that I physically can't be there, it's a difficult thing, and that's the part I do miss the most, I must say.
Yeah, I was going to ask, mate. So, as you said, you like to go to meet, these people that you've worked with. as well as these different locations. Do you feel that like different locations have different kind of, I guess, impacts on your mood or your feeling when you're recording or anything like that?
Right. Well, to be honest, I kind of almost bank on it. So half my job is anime, half my job is video games. I always, if I have the financial ability to, I'll always try and source a place of source a studio, source a group of musicians that are unique, that could be considered unique to that soundtrack. I did an anime called Made in Abyss back in 2017. And I specifically wanted to record in a giant stage, giant recording stage, giant sound stage in Vienna, because it was a sonically incredible room, completely isolated. So it's sort of it's a room within a room, which basically means that this recording studio space, giant space, is suspended. So there's you could have a construction site outside of that studio. And there's no physical way for those frequencies to actually enter that room. So it's so sonically encapsulated in itself that you could record anything. So very, very high-tech room and very, 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 very big. So I think you can record 120 or maybe even 135 musicians there. This anime project I did called Made in Abyss, the whole concept, the visual concept from my point of view, was all about a small group of characters going into a giant cave system called the Abyss. So it's, small characters, big cave system, or small characters, big space. And that idea of small in a very, very big environment and having that very distinct juxtaposition between small and big, how could we translate that into a sonic concept? And because this recording studio that I just described to you in Vienna is built for such a large amount of musicians, I thought, what would it be like if we put a very, very small amount of musicians in that room, but then we recorded all the ambient air, all the ambient space around it, and then used it in the compositional or the mixing process to kind of sonically demonstrate that visual idea of small characters and big space. That idea could be translated to anything. Could be, Florence has its own sort of spin on that, and other anime I've done and other games, etc. But I've always valued being able to go to different locations, work with different musicians, or work with the same musicians in different spaces, with the intended result being that you're creating a unique environment for that particular project. Unique sonic environment, I should say.
So this must have been like a very different switch for you this year then, like you mentioned earlier, to trying to capture that feeling through recording,
right?
Not being as present. Were you able to select as many locations with what's happened, I guess, now?
So it's been a very, very unique / weird year, because the way that a lot of these recording sessions have actually panned out schedule wise, a lot of this wave, we're still in it. It's not like I have the ability to get on a plane and go to the place I want to. But a lot of the places that I had pre-selected, which we were not actually going to record until approximately now / the next couple of months anyway. So I actually had this natural grace period where I wasn't planning to travel anyway, and I wasn't planning to record a lot because it was just pure composition time. So this downtime just randomly coincided with a massive pandemic. But I'm coming out of that luck now, and there's a recording session I'm doing for a show a couple of days from now, and that's literally on the other side of the world, and I just can't get there. So normally I record the show in a completely different part of the world. That part of the world is just not open. It's flat out not open. I just can't record there. So I had to pick a different country. That definitely, when it comes to the OCD side of me, definitely kind of doesn't agree. But, I guess, look, you got to make peace with what you're doing, and you got to be happy that you're able to record in any capacity, to be honest.
No, it's a strange one, because I have similar things in terms of chatting about OCD with level design. So because there's so many people, as you know yourself, working on these types of projects. And for us, when we're making a level, you have multiple people obviously working on it. You have your level designer, your environment artist, your mission designer. It's probably someone from story as well. overall artist, VFX, animation too. And there's something, like you're all like trying to agree on a similar concept. Everyone, needs to have some little bit in there due to the story, the feeling, whatever we're chasing in this level. And it's like you said, there's some points where maybe there's something that I didn't agree with or thought would be better if we did X instead of Y. But when it comes down to it as well, like you said, there's that learning of control, picking your fights and understanding.
Oh yeah, I mean, you definitely got to pick your fights. I mean, I love being part of a team. I love being a team player. I love, but I also love being able to bring my A game and having the space to bring my A game. And I don't mean that in any egotistical way. I just mean it in the sense of let me present as much as I can of myself to you, the project. And I don't mind being not cut down. It sounds a bit cynical, but I don't mind like having it, dissected from that.
Yeah,
I think I will really appreciate like sort of the side of the anime side of the work that I've been able to do. I mean, obviously games as well, but I've really enjoyed the process with anime where they're always quite interested to see what the first impression is, the first sort of raw composers, sounds sorry, you can bleep this out if you want, but it's like the composer's first spunk off.
But like, I was waiting for you to use the button, man. I was waiting for you to drop it on us.
The composer's first. Yeah, perfect. But it's like, it's like that OG Jackson Pollock. And then from that, you're trying to like, take that raw inspiration, you're trying to make it into something that's tangible and workable within a team. So, that part thankfully has not gone away. I mean, with the projects I've been working on this year, a lot of the processes started similar, which is like, okay, what I was saying before about that sort of word painting concept of, I just want to create something that's a great representation on a DNA level of this world.
Yeah.
And it's more about how you execute that, which is, because of COVID kind of changed a little bit, but, core concept is, you're trying to find what matters about a certain story point or an aesthetic or, an idea.
Yeah. I think that's the most interesting part, because obviously we work in different disciplines for the overall good of, say, a project.
Right.
But like just hearing your creative process and just knowing ours and on my side to other artists I've spoken to, like you're saying, it's all similar. Like what you said, we're trying to chase that DNA print, that first core nugget, I guess, from it, and try represent it as best we all can, I guess, in our own ways as well. Like I loved the term there, like exposing yourself to the project. I think that's the best bit, is exposing your... No, mate, like, don't get me wrong, I inject that in my veins, brother. But like, you're trying to like, because you're like, for example, like the concept of, we just pick a word of, let's say, like love, right? Because Florence is very much based on the journey of love too.
Right.
Is our, like you said, you're exposing yourself, but like our version of how we see love, how we've consumed it in our lives, whether it be through media, relationships, and you're trying to show that as well, is fascinating to see when you're working on a team project.
Absolutely. I mean, well, the interesting thing about Florence, because it deals with a core emotional mechanic that the vast majority of people have probably gone through, which is a great relationship followed by a pretty bad breakup. And while that may not be everyone's experience, it is a fairly common experience throughout the world, and I don't think I'm overstepping by saying that. So obviously, everyone's first head over heels relationship, followed by the immediate desecration of that relationship. Everyone's experience is different, but core concept of investing in something beyond comprehension and then having it fall apart in front of you, that emotional whiplash is somewhat universal. And so, I've got that experience. I won't assume for you, but maybe you've got that experience as well. A lot of people that played Florence had that experience as well. And so trying to translate that into a musical idea, which didn't sound, egregious or, cheap, or trying to convey something genuine. I mean, it's not an easy thing. First off, because you got to kind of tap into that reservoir to a certain extent. I remember that time when I felt like absolute horseshit, but then translate it into a musical idea that also did not sound like it was overacting almost. And especially in the case of Florence, it was a decision on the part of the creative lead, Ken, that there would be very little to minimal dialogue.
At Level Design Lobby, we believe everybody has a story to tell. Hobbyist or student, freelancer or veteran, we made it our mission to unite those who share our passion for creating and developing great games. Thanks to our generous Patreon backers, we've been able to do just that. So if you've already pledged your support, thank you. If not, you too can ensure the future of Level Design Lobby, helping us to create even more exciting content, collaborations, interviews, and much more. With awesome perks and rewards, whether you're a seasoned professional or just getting started, you're sure to find something for you. Want to share tips, tricks, and advice with passionate, like-minded developers? Our awesome community Discord has you covered. Fancy practicing your level design, creating strong portfolio content, and having fun? Then try our level design weekends. Or perhaps you want to individually discuss your work, hone your skills, or level up your career? Then consider our one-on-one mentorships. If you share our vision, then go to patreon.com/Level Design Lobby for more information and to pledge your support. Thank you.
The thing that I liked about that, I think, was that, like you said, the very minimum dialogue, but like it was still showing how to communicate not only with your great score, mate, but also there was a moment with where you're arguing and you're putting the pieces together of the speech bubbles. And I loved that at the beginning because, it's like when you first go on that date, you're trying to get to know someone. So the pieces were more like 5 pieces. And by the end, when you think you've clicked, you've made that connection, it's just 2 pieces now. It becomes that ease. Like my question with you, mate, is because did you know how the mechanics were going to work, or were you kind of doing it separately from how the gameplay was going to go?
No, we were very, very involved, Ken, the creative lead, and I, from a very, very early point. I mean, what I will say is that Ken had a very, very, very specific idea from the get-go about how things were going to go. It was obviously very, very open to, practical suggestions, we could do it this way, we could do it that way. But core concept, it was, he was very, very clued in. And he was also very, very, even though Ken's not a professional musician, he's very, very musically in tune, pun intended, I guess. But he's very, very clued in to how music works on an emotional level to people. So we had very, very detailed conversations without ever going into musical technical terms, basically. And we did that with every level. And so if we were, for example, I'll come to your example with the text bubbles in a second, but just to preface it by talking about a different level, which was basically only about layering music. So we were just layering different parts of a composition slowly on top of each other in order to create a more Soundmass-esque track by the end. The whole idea with that track was to tell a story without ever actually progressing. So we would try and capture an emotion and freeze it in time in a 30-second or 1-minute track. And so we would have these sorts of discussions about what we want to say or what we do not want to say with every single level in this game, in this experience. And so when it comes to the level you're referring to with the speech bubbles, core concept, well, actually, because there's a couple of levels that use these speech bubbles. I think the one that you're referring to is the the first dates level, which is, yeah, as you said, like the metaphor of the puzzles being the conversation or the fluidity of conversation. So just for the record, like it is like 11 o'clock at night, which is zero reflection on on the scheduling of this conversation, but it does have a reflection on my pronunciation of words. So apologies if I do fuck up, but yeah. Anyway,
I'm torturing you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You know, Australia is very far in the future, but also very far behind. I don't know. As a fan of interactive experiences, I really enjoyed that idea of, you know, text, you know, the awkwardness of a first date and how it's more difficult to try and create a flow of conversation being represented by a puzzle that eventually gets easier and easier to solve. In the same way that, you know, as you go on multiple dates with someone who you get to know better and better, the banter, the, you know, the rapport gets easier and easier and it gets more fluid and more fluid. So when it came to the music side of that, it actually had a kind of an opposite effect because, you know, if you think about it, when you're getting closer to someone, especially the first time that you meet them or the first couple of times that you meet them, if it's like that true, genuine, you know, first love excitement sort of thing, you know, you got those butterflies, you got that almost excitable anxiety. And so while the puzzle element or the level design element of those, you know, text bubbles or those puzzle speeches or whatever you want to call it, as they're getting easier, the music is actually going purposefully against that and is becoming more complicated and more excitable because you're trying to underscore a certain emotional element, which the gameplay doesn't need to accent because it's actually accenting a more, you know, primal sort of idea of dating. And you're just kind of pushing that idea of, oh man, I really like this person, but it's much easier to talk about it now. Yeah, so sometimes the music would work in a juxtaposition to the gameplay, but hopefully in an effective way.
No, man, I think honestly, like, you know, it was great, overall great project. The music was great, man. Honestly, I really enjoyed that. And I remember messaging Ken, I think after I played it, and I just said to him, I was like, dude, you've just done something, you and your team have just done something so different and so incredible. Like, because the game length isn't particularly long, but like what it leaves you with, like you know, it's that Kermit meme of like staring out the window, raining, of like, how do I feel? Like that's what it was. What does it all mean? Yes. No, and that's what it was, man.
Look, I consider myself very, very lucky to be part of it. I mean, I have to give credit to my agent, Fabian, for the fact that he knew Ken, he was working with him, and he suggested myself. And, you know, when I first joined on, I didn't really understand the full concept of Florence, just because it took a bit of time to really, like, kind of get into the, like, you know, to really become part of the team. And this is kind of funny, actually. So at the time, I was living in the UK. I was living in London. The team is where I live now in Melbourne. At the time, I hadn't lived here. I had no experience living here. I would come over for PAX Australia, and that was the first time we met. We'd already written about a third of the music at the time, but after after meeting Ken and the team, the whole team, which at the time was only a small handful of people, but being able to actually be in the office, actually creating some music, you know, in a small remote studio in the office with the team right there, and be able to have that sort of face-to-face interaction. That's when I really felt like I was really, it felt like I was writing music that meant something. And it's not that the music that I've written before wasn't that as well. It just felt like, you know, when you know that moment in the project where things just click, and obviously until then you're working very, very hard and diligently and making sure that you're doing your best work. But it's a nice feeling when you finally get to a point where you're like, oh, I finally truly get it. And it was so, you know, because Florence is very, very intimate, and the selection in terms of recording and the type of recording that we did was trying to reflect that intimacy, but to to be able to work in a small office with a bunch of people that really cared. It really kind of, it was that last final kind of, that key, that final combination lock that really actually felt like we were now starting to do something.
That's amazing, mate. Yeah, I think this is another thing that people don't realize, especially aspiring people who want to get into the similar industry as us, is you put it so well, is you're working very hard on a rough idea of what you think it might be, but it isn't until like when it all clicks that you finally actually are able to see, what it is, what does it mean. So yeah, it takes a while for that to happen.
I mean, the whole idea of experience is that you're just able to maybe see the future failures easier and quicker. Like when I was 24 when I did Made in Abyss. I had no idea what I was doing.
How did that deal come about? Like you said, for someone so young at the time as well, man, that must have been amazing.
I mean, I'll say it right now. None of it makes sense. None of it is repeatable. And even if it was repeatable, I'm not sure I can recommend it. But because of I had an educational background where I'd moved to the UK to study film music composition and the practicality of film music composition. And when I say the practicality of film music composition, I mean the process of from the start, composing, orchestrating, sheet music, conducting, working with musicians, sometimes mixing, mastering, and delivering a product. Combining that with my undergraduate education, which was all about art music. So the whole idea with that was that I was doing my best to be as creative as possible and being pushed to kind of question a lot of artistic sort of, styles or assumptions. And so the idea of those two kind of in a weird way, kind of contrasting universes coming together for the first time in a professional job where I had to make something work because it was a TV show. It was a paid professional gig. I had to make sure it worked properly. At the same time, the content of which was so intriguing that I wanted to make it unique. Like when I, discovered all these new styles and composers and sort of concepts about music and what music is on a fundamental level from my undergraduate. So it was an attempt, to combine that. And I don't mean this in any, disrespectful way, combine all the artsy shit with the actual practicality of actually, needing to deliver an actual product. And so those two different types of education kind of came together in a weird sort of bit of a climax with Made in Abyss, where the content was appealing in a way where I wanted to make a really, really interesting or attempt at making a very, very interesting, sonic universe, while also making sure that we could actually still deliver on a quality, on a practical level, and make sure that, everything came in on time and on budget.
I'm going to make sure I don't fanboy too much here, mate, but honestly, the job and the music of Made in Abyss was phenomenal. Like, I've been listening to it while working on Cyberpunk for some of the more, emotional levels that I've had to do together, like inspiration and think of things like that. But the overall project of that anime, dude, is like we spoke offline, but I recently watched the film of it, and honestly, it's a fantastic world. And despite me having the manga to read, I almost don't want to go ahead, because the way that it's all put together with your music, the animation, and all of that to really sell this space for, how wonderful and dark it can be is. Yeah, honestly, man, the job you've all done is phenomenal. I'm really a fan of it.
I mean, it almost goes without saying, but I really, really appreciate you saying that. I love having some sort of gallows humor when I talk. I like keeping things very, very humorous, and I never want to change that part of the speaking pattern that I enjoy. I love talking to people in a very humorous and almost, I don't mind getting deep, but I love having a certain lightness to a conversation, a certain fluidity. the music, the music side of things can get, it can get very serious. And, I guess it's sort of like the best way I got it described to me actually was when I was a kid, I used to do archery. I did archery at a local thing. And what the person who was sort of guiding me at the time, I mean, I was awful student, but one thing that stuck with me, weirdly enough, was he was kind of showing my attention to archers in a competition. And they had a great rapport. They were joking around, but the moment that they kind of drew their bow to take their shot for that part of the competition, it's like that light bulb kind of switched on or off in their head, where like they stopped being like their personality and they kind of just sunk into their profession. They sunk into their fucking craft, and they just became almost like a unit. And while I definitely wouldn't describe what I do in such a glorified manner, I guess, I like writing serious music because it means a lot to me. But I also like leaving to an extent that adore. So when I hear a lovely compliment, like you just said, I really appreciate it. And it's encouraging to move forward. It's also, it just kind of reminds me, it's like, when I'm writing that sort of music, especially for that show, it is a very, very, very unique sort of mentality where you kind of going into a little bit of the darkness, but, it's an interesting place to visit, but I'm not sure if I could stay there indefinitely. I'm not sure if I'd be a resident of that world, but it is nice to know that having the ability to go there and having that sort of emotional depth is possible. It's encouraging. So it's a very, very long-winded way of saying thank you, and it's very encouraging for what's to come.
It is funny you mentioned about like visiting those places and living with it, because I remember listening to an interview with the designers on Naughty Dog when they first made Last of Us, and everyone like said, "Oh, they must have just been listening to depressing music, all the lights switched off as they made that game," because again, that hits on very heavy subjects. But it's like you said, they said no, we were laughing and having a good time, while we made it. And I think that is one of the most interesting things about sometimes being a creator. Now I'm going to sound artsy-fartsy, but
do it.
I'm just swirling around my wine as I say this. Is that,
of course.
no, you see, I don't know why I went like 1960s gangster, dude. Yeah.
Monocle, whatever it is.
I'm waiting for Jeeves to arrive with your topper.
Sorry, before I derail your comment completely, please continue with your point.
No, but it's a weird one to express about when to go into that, because there's some, like I said, at the time of us recording this, Cyberpunk is about 4 days left before release.
Yeah.
And some of the places you go to, one try relate, like some of us can't relate with things like that's why I think, and this isn't a dig or anything so much as a criticism, like with Last of Us 2, I think that's why sometimes it's harder to relate to that game, because it's more about vengeance, and most of us in our lives will never carry out a kill on people we have hatred for, so it's hard to relate. But you've got to put your mind into that of like, how would you handle those situations, finding someone that you care about in some horrid places. Absolutely.
I mean, I sure as shit don't want to have the feeling of wanting to kill someone because they killed someone that I love. Yeah. I don't want to have to go through that. But if I had to project it, I would do my level best. Something slightly more tame is, as we were talking about Florence before, I mean, it's a lot more common and a lot less brutal to go through a breakup, a first love breakup. It's a lot more standard in life than having to deal with, murder or revenge or wanting to avenge the death of a loved one. But, I know there's a weird stereotype that I've heard a couple of times through composers that are a lot more experienced than me, which is that they've described very, very, very sad, like depressed or very, very, kind of generally kind of upset or not very living life sort of composers as writing the best happy music. So people that are sad on their, upset, depressed, kind of down on a daily basis write very, very good happy music, and vice versa. People that are normally very jolly tend to actually have a successful time writing sad music. It's a bit of a stereotype. It sure as shit doesn't hold up on a anything more than a general kind of context, and it's more of a joke between composers. But if you see a composer that's normally happy, they probably are very, very good at writing sad music. and potentially vice versa. You see happy artists and you see sad artists, and they're very good at writing happy music, or they're very good at doing happy things. So I guess because maybe they're used to projecting all the happiness into their craft. Who knows, man? But yeah, it's a very, very weird one. I mean, artists are weird, dude. That's the best way I can put it. Right? Artists are super weird.
And the thing is like every artist is weird in their own way. I find like,
oh yeah,
you can have generalized kind of views on things, but dude, like when you speak to different people, that weirdness of what it's on or what that factor that it surprises me every freaking time. Like I think my worry is finding out what my weirdness is. I'm waiting for someone to finally tell me, oh dude, you're a bit weird on X, Y, and Z.
Oh, I've got, yeah. I mean, it depends on your group of friends, I guess. But sometimes, yeah, they call you out. They call your ass out pretty regularly.
And that's sometimes the best friends, the ones that call you out for your stupid shit.
Like, what the f are you talking about? Yeah,
good news.
I know. Like, yeah, I guess it's the difference between like quirks and just bad traits.
Oh yeah, I mean that's why like it's very rare that I go like very artsy fartsy with descriptions, because like my friends are like having none of that shit. They're like,
oh, for sure, yeah. It's like that very, very fine line between you're just trying to explain what you're doing and not trying to sound like a dickhead explaining it.
Yeah, that's always the challenge, man. That's always the challenge.
It's like that's the thing. Like I love writing the high concept stuff if I have the ability to do it in the first place. I love like kind of reaching for that new idea, that new approach, or just basically what I figured out recently is that I live for the moment where the listener makes the who farted face. You know that face where like people like frown and like the facial muscles around like the mouth recoil and like, ooh, who farted? But it's not like the negative, it's the positive. It's like when you hear that bass that just like penetrates your soul at a concert, you're like, oh, it's like, it's the constipated look, but positive. And, it's about new and interesting ways to get to that point now. So, it's tied up in a humorous approach. But at the same time, you're deadly fucking serious about, you want to get there. You want to find a really cool way where, you can have that, that far-faced experience. At the same time, people turn around to you and say, man, that was a really, really, really cool way of doing things.
And I think that's sometimes when like you're doing, I guess, like testing or first listen through, because I don't know about you, but like I'm paying very much attention on someone's face, sometimes more than them playing, because I want to see if the like I said, the reaction is there. Yeah. And sometimes you can be like, oh shit, nope, I missed that by quite a fucking lot.
Yeah, it's like, where's the recoil?
Yeah.
Is it achieved? Have you achieved what you wanted to, what you expected to? And that part of the process is very, very serious. I mean, you're looking to be impactful, but I guess just not at the consequence of buying into your own, fantasy.
No, you're not smelling your own farts and like, yes, exactly. I truly am.
And saying, man, that's great candy floss. Yeah, no, for sure. And that's where really good friends come in. It's like you were saying just now, where your friends call you out. If it sounds like crap, it's like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah, so you're like, fuck.
Fair enough.
I thought it was cool.
Exactly. If you can convince the friends that would take you out for a ride, then maybe you're doing something okay.
But mate, I don't want to keep you up any longer. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, mate. Really appreciate the chat we had before as well. It's been
not at all.
It's been brilliant.
I apologize if I derailed the conversation too much, but I hope it was at least a fun time.
Yeah, mate, I think it was a great time. So again, just thank you. If anyone wants to reach out to you, mate, or just see what you're doing, is there any way that they can contact you or follow you?
Not at all. So I'm on the Twitters at Kevin Penkin, and I mean, you can look at my Instagram if you want. It's mostly just cats and food, but if that is something that floats your boat, it's K Penkin or K Pank, I think, one of the two. But yeah, Twitter is normally where I do a bunch of shit posting, but also like occasional career updates that have some semblance of good news. Yeah, so if that is something that interests anyone, then I will be there.
Awesome. So I recommend checking him out. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so on Twitter as well, which is @MaxPez. If you want to email into the show, please do. It's leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. So thank you all very much for listening, and we'll catch you all next time.